Hi everyone and welcome back. Today's lecture is going to be graphic design. Everything in our lives, objects, printed images, and constructed spaces has been designed by someone. Clothing, airplanes, toothbrushes, homes, community spaces. Design is vital, not an afterthought. Designers enhance our world through the combination of aesthetics and utility. So they are both artists and creative problem solvers. We talked about design concepts and principles in the chapter on the principles of design. Hopefully you have gained an understanding of how design enhances visual information and mechanical qualities of our environment, the environment we live in, basically. It's simple. Good design solves problems. Bad design creates problems. Some design disciplines are graphic design, which this chapter is about, industrial design, motion graphics, textile design, clothing design, interior design, architecture, and environmental design. So graphic design is the one we most often come to contact with every day in our daily lives. We interact with graphic design without knowing. We don't seek it out. It's just there. Graphic designers can have a huge influence on us to attract, inform, persuade, delight, bore, offend, and even repel us. And they often take on this profession because of this powerful interaction that they have with the public. So let's look at this text dominant, right? There's a lot of text in this one. This text dominant design. This is for a sign, and it shouts, "Give me sun at night." Then it says, "Where do we find this?" And the answer, "Buy it at Gum." That's a department store in Russia. Is shouted back in really loud font. "Blinding and cheap," states the slogan in the bottom corner. And the focal point, a light bulb, is surrounded by a blue square. It's a geometric shape that we talked about in graphic design as being something that's really pleasing and draws our eye. And just in case we don't get it from that, there's a couple of arrows pointing at it, so we know what it's about. The poster was created in 1923 in Russia, and it was promoting a product that wasn't really common in use that time. An electric light bulb. I know it's kind of unusual to think that they wouldn't have a lot of electric light bulbs at the time, but it was not a common form of lighting. Back in those days, gas was the most common form of light. So the goal, most often, of graphic design is to get us to do something. I'm going to repeat that. The goal of graphic design is to get us to do something. That's an important thing. In this poster, the goal of the designer was to promote travel by ship. So what do you think was that this designer was trying to say? Take a look. What was the intention of this design? We can see that the ship dominates the composition. It looms large above us, the viewers. It's larger than life, and perhaps it is demonstrating the safety and specialness one will experience with this mode of travel. The text just has the weight of the ship, which is 40,000 tons, and where it goes to. Not much info. The image does most of the talking in this composition. Remember, in 1932, the tragedy of the Titanic was still pretty fresh in people's minds. So safety was a very important consideration. The term graphic design refers to how we use words and pictures to solve problems in visual communication. In the past, most graphic design has been used for things to be printed: books, magazines, brochures, packaging, posters, etc. It goes from the postage stamp to billboards, and now includes electronic media such as web pages. It is a creative process of art and technology used to communicate ideas. Using symbols, type, color, and illustration, a graphic designer can create a composition that attracts us to look at it and informs us and even can persuade us. A good graphic designer creates a memorable arrangement of images and text that just works. So let's talk a little bit about logos and symbols. Now, we did talk about this earlier. Logos and symbols can become a representation of a person or a company. It is part of their identity. In our first assignment, we chose symbols to represent us or our family. And a logo is basically an identifying mark or trademark based on letter forms. It's a symbol that is based on an image rather than lettering. Or a symbol is based on an image rather than lettering. And often they're used together. Corporations spend millions to make a distinct and memorable logo to represent them. Many logos evolve over time. Behind us here we have this logo from NASA. This is the first logo from the 1950s, which when we look here, we see in the 1970s, because in the 1950s, we were just getting into the idea of space flight, of going out into outer space, sending man into space, going to the moon. Here we see the next version, and it's a really futuristic version of the NASA logo from the 1970s after the moon landing. With the A's in the symbol, the A's are symbolizing the nose of a rocket, right? And that was, and then we look into the 1990s, after budget cuts and the Challenger disaster, and the logo morphs again. It kind of goes back to that earlier style that we saw in the beginning, right? So we see that there's some of the elements of that original logo are used back in this one in the 1990s. So it's morphed again and has this kind of a Star Trek-like swoosh and an echo of the original logo, with blue added to represent the heavens. It's a challenge to keep a logo or a symbol up to date and still recognizable by the public. In this case, a solution was made for Saks Fifth Avenue, whose logo included an elegant kind of cursive style script that was familiar to the public, and was the designer actually decided a way to update this was to cut up that logo. I think it was into something like 64 equal pieces, and then reassemble it in a random order. It refreshed the old logo, and it solved the problem of keeping the logo recognizable so people could still see it. The logo made it seem new, basically. It was still recognizable as an established brand. The artist said it creates consistency without sameness. So you could reassemble it in a lot of ways and it was still consistent, but it wasn't the same. Let's talk a little bit about typography. So typography is lettering, and lettering is an art form. Typography is the art of composing printed material from letter forms. Typefaces or fonts. Designers would create designs that relate images and words in complementary ways. Not that long ago, words and letters, and the letters that make them up, were either handwritten or typewritten. And typewriters all had the same typeface or font. And we didn't really even know its name. As a graphic designer myself, back in the 1970s and 80s, we used to have to hand set specialized decorative fonts using press-on lettering. I used a brand called Letraset. It was a ton of work, very time-consuming, and we didn't have that many choices in font styles. Now, anyone who can use a computer is able to have access to an infinite selection, of fonts, and can easily typeset anything easily. Computers and their programs are basically just a tool, just like pencils, brushes, and cameras are a tool that artists use or designers use to facilitate the artistic process. The Chinese invented printing in the 11th century, and since that time, thousands of typefaces have been created. The text from our book is Garamond. It's an elegant and readable typeface that has serifs. The most common lettering in modern times came from the design of Roman capital letters. These are very calligraphy-like, and with thick and thin lines that end in serifs. Serifs, and it's spelled S-E-R-I-F-S, serifs are short lines with a pointed end that are set at an angle to the main letter strokes or lines. So they're like the little lines at the end of letters. The ones we see behind us here are sans serif. Sans serif means without serif. So in printing, the term Roman means not italic. Sans serif means without serifs, and are considered very modern, even though they are based on ancient origins. Black letter typefaces are based on medieval lettering and are not much in use today. They look kind of goth if you see those. Designers are constantly creating new fonts and updating old font styles. These are examples by Tobias Ferré-Jones. Nobel is based on a style from 1929 Holland. Armada is meant really to recall large warehouse doors, and Garage Gothic to imitate printing on parking tickets. So this work of art, this is one of my favorites. This work of art by Heidi Cody is called American Alphabet. It takes fonts from popular brand logos, actually, and collects them in one ironic artwork. See if you can guess one or more of the brands that are represented here in this American alphabet. Email me the results. I want each of you to get at least 2. So I want you to look at this carefully. It's in your book. And if you don't see it in your book, then look it up online. It's called American Alphabet by Heidi Cody. And I want you to guess which letters, what brands or companies are represented by these different letters. So let's go on and talk a little bit about posters and advertisements. So a poster is a concise visual announcement, right? It provides information through typographic and pictorial images. Posters are usually used to advertise or persuade. The best posters, the most eye-catching, are very simple. In advertising, the concept is called KISS, K-I-S-S. And we used to use this in graphic design and in marketing. It stands for keep it simple. And we used to say stupid, but we don't say stupid anymore. I always say keep it simple, silly now. Modern posters basically date back over 100 years. 100 years ago, when most posters were lithographs, and fine artists, we put in quotes, fine artists would make extra money by designing posters. Toulouse-Lautrec was one of the most famous poster designers. You'll see a lot of his work in posters from the early 1900s or late 1800s and early 1900s, and was very influential. Probably the most well-known designer back then. And back then, all posters were hand-drawn. So each individual poster was hand-drawn, and color was added with separate presses of stones, and that's how lithographs are made, with the pressing stone. So one for each different color that was used. So a lot of work went into making a poster. In the early 1900s, tech advances made mass production a breeze, and large-scale images such as photographs could be mass-produced along with the text. After radio and television became mainstream in the 1950s, poster art fell away a little bit. However, posters, and I'm saying like old school posters, continue to fill a role of instant communication and are often used for social and political purposes. Posters can be powerful forces of change, social change especially. Science equals death. Let's look at this one here. Silence equals death. Let's see if we can get this to go dark for us. There we go. So now we can see this poster in the background. So silence equals death. It's a strong reminder that a public conversation and collective action is not only necessary, but imperative to overcome an epidemic. The HIV/AIDS epidemic is still going on today, even as we face an epidemic or a pandemic locally right now. So this poster uses a symbol of a pink triangle. This was the same symbol, though upside down, that the Nazis utilized to brand gay people and force them into concentration camps. The group ACT UP claimed this symbol, turned right side up again, as a powerful declaration of gay pride. This symbol or logo is still in use today on posters, T-shirts, bumper stickers, etc. And it shows that social causes can adopt something that in the past was negative, right? This was a negative thing that was put on gay people by the Nazis, and the gay people took it, owned it, and used it to show a source of pride and solidarity, especially in the fight against HIV/AIDS. So social causes find posters and handbills very effective to build community, especially in countries where the internet is strictly controlled. In this case, we'll see. In this case, we have a poster that reminds us of our rights, such as the right to a nationality, a human right in war-torn Africa, where we see most African people show our images in the media show most African people being affected by famine or war. So it's a really depressing kind of a representation. So this artist chose instead a healthy black face looking out between the stripes of a flag to help change some social things. In fact, with another poster that this artist did, he was actually banned from his country. He was forced to leave his own country because of the political message that was going on there. And the government didn't like it. He was getting solidarity from his posters. So the government was pretty unhappy with it. Let's take a quick look here. So here's the poster that caused him to be shunned, basically, or driven from his country. And in this case, he used a really common advertisement for alcohol, right, for a famous vodka brand, and replace the liquid inside with blood. And he's talking about what's happening to his people, genocide. And this was kind of a big deal at the time. So this poster created some social change in his country. He's still involved in this and is still working at it. Let's go on. We'll move here. This is the name of the artist here, Chaz Mavian Davies. Right. So while posters can create solidarity, they can also be a little bit humorous. So in this one, so we can get this down so we can see it a little better. There we go. So in this one, this poster came out, whoops, try that one more time. This poster came out in 2001, just a couple of months after the 9/11 and the tragedy of 9/11. So we see that the artist is trying to bring people together, build community with a little bit of humor. You've got some kind of fun references to the different areas, including Trumpistan, and it was just putting a little bit of humor back into the sadness that was going on at the time. So we see something like this poster where the artist is talking about Tomahawk missiles, and also a little bit humorous, but making a political statement here, using a special font that he created. We've got the Tomahawk missiles that are the Tomahawk graphic for all of your preemptive strikes, right? So they're using a graphic that's kind of fun there. Posters can also have a particular kind of a look. We often find posters for tours, like musical tours, have the same kind of a design. This one here is from the North American tour, 1994. And we see that they've used a particular graphic style. There's a lot of words, but we have some really bright colors. And this is a style of poster that we've seen not just for music, but for sports events. Same kind of a thing. It's a graphic style that's very recognizable. We'll look at some other kinds of graphics. In this case, we've got an album design. This actually won an award for album design. This is the Sex Pistols album. I think it's called "God Save the Queen," and that's a type of graphic design, album covers that wasn't quite lost, but went away a little bit once compact disc CDs came out. And now it's coming back into its own. The album covers are pretty amazing. Book covers, that's another type of graphic design. This one also won an award. The artist really felt like they had won something special when someone called in and complained that the book cover had gotten wet. So the whole point of this was to make it look like the cover had been damaged with water. It's about someone who is suffering from alcoholism, and dry refers to not drinking, and then also some of the things that make people fall off the wagon. So you've got dry, but it looks wet. So that was one of the things that this artist was trying to go for. So let's take a look at motion graphics now. Motion graphics are a particular kind of graphic. We have these as a often in the beginning of movies or TV shows, graphics that are in motion. Back in the day, it was really difficult to do those things, to put those in motion, so to speak. And so a lot of work went into that type of graphic design for motion graphics. Not an easy task. And we'll see. Let's see here. There we go. So this is a sequence from the beginning of 7, and I don't have it in motion, obviously, because these are still pictures. But you can see that there was a lot of work went into it, and a lot of design principles go into it. Doing kind of trick things sometimes, like having people walk up and down walls. This was something that was real innovative at the time and very eye-catching. Let's talk a little bit about industrial design. So industrial design, well, it's industrial. So we're talking about big things, refrigerators, cars, computers, things that we use in our everyday life that aren't something we think about that much. We don't often think about the things that we use every day that are a product of industrial design. But someone had to design each and every one of these things. So your refrigerator that you use, your stove, any kind of a kitchen appliance, right? A transistor radio. This is a classic design. This is a design from 1957. By the way, if you come across one, they're highly collectible. So you don't want to throw it out. You want to hang on to that one. This was a very simple design, and it became the model for almost all radios in the future. Here's something that you might recognize. This was another thing that was really innovative when it first came out, the computer. And Apple designed this in a way to seem very futuristic, which of course it was at the time, and to give the feel of kind of science fiction. So you have that kind of futuristic sci-fi feel that we're in this whole other thing now. And here we go. Oral-B cross-action toothbrush from 1999. Like I said, everything in our lives was designed by someone. Doesn't matter if it's a book cover, a computer, or a toothbrush. Graphic design and all the design principles that we've been over are incredibly important in our everyday life. I wanted you guys to become more aware of this, and I want you to look around you every day. Doesn't matter where it's at, out in public, on the street, in your own home, on the computer, or on the TV. And I want you to really pay attention to all the different things that have been designed by someone, whether it's a poster, a handbill, or objects in your home and life. So that's our chapter on graphic design. I'm going to do a short video on our assignments that are coming up. So we have some assignments we'll need to do, and I will see how we can do class discussion on those, but we'll do our best. So thank you again for joining me, and that'll be it for the lecture on graphic design today.